Welcome to Worlds Within, where story becomes space. We're your hosts, and every episode we explore fictional worlds that don't just live on the page, they pull you in, build themselves around you, and let you wander through them.
This is a podcast for readers who don't just love books, they live in them. We dive deep into sensory storytelling, character perspectives, and the world-building mechanics that turn fiction into a fully immersive experience. Before we dive into today's book, let's introduce ourselves. We're your hosts, Alyssa and Ash, best friends who have bonded over, well, many things, but books included.
My name is Alyssa, lifelong fiction reader, but fairly new to romantasy. I think I read my first true romantasy book late last year. I don't think today's book counts as romantasy. We'll see.
It straddles.
We'll see. But I've mostly enjoyed reading contemporary fiction, mysteries and thrillers, and an occasional cozy seasonal something tossed in around the holidays. Currently wrapping up Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli, which is the second book in the Crimson Moth series.
So glad you're almost finally done.
But top of my TBR has got to be Wildside by Elsie Silver.
Interesting. I'm Ash, and I have been reading romantasy far longer than I care to admit, but definitely since high school. I've always enjoyed things that were supernatural, mystical, magical. I have, in recent years, picked up more thrillers and mysteries, thanks to you. And I recently finished Sunrise on the Reaping, and then reread all of the other associated Hunger Games books. Next, I am deciding between a few Riley Sager books, but I think I'm going to go with Middle of the Night.
Cool. Today, y'all, we're talking about Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning, a novel that turns the streets of Dublin into something far stranger, darker, and more seductive than any travel guide could prepare you for. Let's step inside. We'll open each podcast with a plot teaser. We've made a cuppa to match the book and read the synopsis so that we can just kind of lay some groundwork. Fair warning, though, we will discuss some spoilers in the book throughout the show. So if you haven't read it and you'd like to not be spoiled, this is your chance to jump off the podcast, keep scrolling, we'll wait. Okay, hopefully you're gone.
Fair warning.
Or hopefully you're here. I don't know. But today we're sipping on a ginger, peach, and turmeric tea. Mac describes the smell of her sister and her sister's room and apartment as a peaches and cream candle. And so we don't have cream today, but we've got the peach nailed here. But we wanted something with a little spice, given the seductive, sexual high fae. So with that, let's get into the plot.
So Dark Fever was published on Halloween of 2006. Spooky. When Michaela's sister was murdered, she left a single clue to her death, a cryptic message on Mac's cell phone. Journeying to Ireland in search of answers, Mac is soon faced with an even greater challenge, staying alive long enough to master a power she had no idea she possessed, a gift that allows her to see beyond the world of man into the dangerous realm of the Fae. As Mac delves deeper into the mystery of her sister's death, her every move is shadowed by the dark, mysterious Jericho, while at the same time, the ruthless Vlaine, an alpha fae who makes sex an addiction for human women, closes in on her. As the boundary between worlds begins to crumble, Mac's true mission becomes clear: to find the elusive Shisadu before someone else claims the all-powerful Dark Book, because whoever gets it first holds nothing less than complete control of both worlds in their hands.
So I know we've got varying relationships to this book, but I'd like to hear from you. What is your relationship to this book?
So I was very excited to put this as our inaugural book for this podcast, because I discovered it and the subsequent series in 2011. We were both in college, and I just gloss over it, and I just don't think about it, and it's fine.
It's a good tactic.
But I spent a lot of hours in the lowest levels of Booth Library devouring the first 5 books. I got very mad at one point because somebody had the second or the last 2 checked out, and then it was like coming due, and then they like renewed and I was like, no, I need these. But I reread those first 5 for several years, and then when I ultimately went to buy them, I discovered that there were additional books that had been released since then, and that the final one was on its way. So I have now reread the complete series 3 or 4 times, and it's probably my biggest comfort series. What about you?
You have been recommending this book and entire series to me for as long as I've known you, and I have been so resistant.
That's a good word, resistant.
Because I just was not in this genre at all. I was reading some pretty dark, heavy thrillers that were fairly trauma-inducing.
What? No.
And I just was like, oh, fantasy, like that's not for me. But I finally gave it a go, I think in 2013, summer of 2023.
Yeah, that one.
That's a year that happened. It took me a while to get through it, but once I did, I devoured the first 5 of those books. I just reread it for this episode and am dying to talk about my first impressions of the world and how immersed I became.
Well, then let's get into it.
So off the rip, Mac feels so real to me. She's a Southern girl describing her carefree, colorful life in the like humid Georgia heat, right? She's sitting poolside, like you can feel it and you know exactly who she is. And then we get that first change in her world. She gets news of her sister's death, Alina, and suddenly Mac's world that was super colorful becomes colorless. And I was right there with her. I studied grief in grad school, as you know, so I know the ins and outs of like what a tragic loss like that does to your worldview. And the emotional weight that Moning puts into these scenes make it so real. So real. So I'm immediately pulled in, right? And her world is starting to transform. There's a clear before and after. And then she decides to go to Dublin. And at first, Dublin is just beautiful, right? We get descriptions of Mac saying, I didn't want it to be beautiful, but it was. But she enters not as a traveler, right, or a tourist. She's someone grieving and looking for answers and not really trusting her reality. And that deepens my immersion because we're not seeing a postcard perfect version of the city. We're seeing it through grief and suspicion. And even though Dublin is kind of romantic, right, rainy and like, I don't know, full of people.
Off the cobblestones.
Yeah, high leather-backed snugs in the pubs. It peels back into something far more dangerous. And so we're learning in real time as Mac is learning, and I am right there with her every step of the way. Ooh. But because we're reading it through Mac's retelling, it just becomes this gradual world building. And so I just couldn't put it down once I was on this journey with her, wanting to learn more about this world and what is behind Dublin.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, obviously, it's hard to say first, since it has been so long since I first read it, and I have read it so many times since. But when we reread it for this podcast, I came at it from a fresh perspective. And it was nice because it kind of was like rereading it for the first time all over again. And I was reminded how intentionally the world changes, like through the writing as like Mac is experiencing it. I also had to keep reminding myself that the story and what we're experiencing isn't just filtered through Mac's experience like we would in any like first person story. It's also filtered through her memory of the experience.
Ooh, that's a good point.
And so like that the clarity that hindsight gives, and also
what does Michael Scott say? Hindsight's 2020.
Should have had it. Should have had hindsight.
Should have had hindsight.
But like also, no matter what, you never have a perfect retelling of an event. And so it's like, how much do we gain or lose in her retelling the different moments? So I had to I keep thinking about that, or I kept thinking about it as I was rereading it. I was also struck by how as much as she is confused and unsure of a lot of things around her, she has this really acute awareness of people as she describes them. And it's uncanny and makes them very real. And it's not just people like Barons or Vlaine, who she is like interacting with and like developing relationships, but it's even as small as there's the old man that gives her the directions to the Gardai station, and like from the way he talked to like I could see him, I could feel him, I could smell him like in front of me.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse. Just from her description of him, and like it made him very real, and he's a throwaway character at that point, you know?
NPC.
Yeah, and I was going to make that reference and I didn't.
Beat you to it.
Thank you.
But yeah, Mac is the key here, right? Like, we've read other books where there's long, like, waxing poetic about scenes. It's long expositional text.
Which has its time and its place.
Of course, and can be very beautiful. But the beauty of this is that we're learning it through Mac, be it through her descriptions of her memories, the people around her, or just as she's learning more about Dublin. It all feels so stinking real. She really is the gateway and the device through which Moning creates this world.
As we become more immersed in the world with Mac, we also begin to see more of the Fae, and both the Seelie and Unseelie. And the use of her evolving awareness is omniscient description as a lens for the world building. It's a powerful narrative device. You commented when we discussed the emotional texture heightens the immersion. And as her reality transforms, it's almost like she has stepped through a portal. It's on her own.
Yeah, it makes it so much more three-dimensional, right? It's not just words on a page. People, scenes, emotional weight, conversations, they all come to life through this. And we can kind of walk through how the world transforms through Mac's retelling of this story. So we know that she first goes to Dublin after her sister's death in search of answers. And she didn't want it to be beautiful, but it was. She says, I was here for answers, not atmosphere, but Dublin was dripping with it. Standing there in the city, she was in a rapidly deepening dusk on a cobbled street in the heart of a foreign city. That's one of her first moments where Mac feels like an outsider, right? She's left the comfort of Georgia. She's lost her sister, and she doesn't fit in this world that she finds herself in, and she's kind of in awe of it. And her perception is changed because she's seeing it through grief, but you can't deny Dublin's appeal. I've never been, but it's high on the list.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So high. One of the sensory descriptions that really stood out to me early on in the book is Mac describes a meal she has at the pub. And it's not often that we get like food descriptions in books because they're kind of throwaway, right? Who wants to like read the heroine sat down for a meal? But this meal, I want to sit down and eat it with her in this pub.
Absolutely.
She is having, quote, a bowl of thick, hearty Irish stew. Yes. Warm soda bread. Mm-hmm. A slice of chocolate whiskey cake.
Done.
Washed down with a perfectly stacked Guinness.
I can't say I've ever had a perfectly stacked Guinness, but I mean...
poorly stacked Guinness is still good.
Exactly.
We should have had Guinness instead of tea today.
Maybe.
Maybe next time we'll think about what else we could be sipping on. But in this moment, it's comfort, right? She's in this pub that has those high leatherback snugs, and there's people about. It's very grounding in this physical reality before she kind of descends into this fae world.
Well, and it's such a normal moment. Like, she's describing people watching, which is like just such a great thing. I mean, if you've never gone out to eat on your own, I highly recommend doing it at least once. It's just so nice to like sit and like observe other people, and like a meal is probably the best time to watch them because I feel like you're your most real. Mm-hmm. Now you spoke about the soup, and obviously we talk that she uses food as like a comfort, especially like, you know, coming from a very specific like cuisine of like Southern, because honestly nobody does comfort food like Southern, like
That's
the South.
True. Yeah.
And so like coming from that and like searching for that, and this is probably the closest she gets to it. If you were in her position, what would you say is the soup that you want to bring you out of, like, you've walked through cold, foggy, wet streets, being used to a warmer climate, and you're frightened and you're grieving and you're feeling all these things. What is the soup that brings you out of that moment?
I'm never going to turn down soup, if I'm honest.
That's fair.
But I would say my mom makes a killer roasted red pepper soup. And she always had this little, like, I don't know, like a cream drizzle that would go on it that was slightly spicy. And so it was this roasty, toasty, peppery flavor, like bell pepper, not black pepper, but bell pepper flavor with just a little heat, but a little smooth creaminess. And then if you've got a little French bread, toasty bread with butter on it to sop up the rest, that pure comfort.
It's like a very elevated grilled cheese and tomatoes sandwich or soup sandwich.
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, that sounds delightful.
Yeah.
Personally, and this feels also very on brand for this book, but I love a good potato soup with a little bit of sour cream and a little bit of cheese. And don't come at me, but I love veggies in my potato soup.
You heard it here first. Your mom would be so proud.
I know, right?
Look at her. She's eating her veggies,
I'm
y'all.
eating my veggies. All of them. Or at least peas, carrots, and corn.
At least the ones in soup.
At least the ones in soup.
But it's also in this moment where Mac is at the pub that we start to see that Dublin's not what it seems.
Yeah.
So in her people watching, which she describes exceptionally well, she has something that she describes as like a double vision, like a hallucination. She was looking at this incredibly handsome man talking to this woman, and then all of a sudden the vision changed and it became something hideous, she describes it. And she's kind of freaked out, but also like, I must just be really tired. This can't be real. I'm seeing things.
I love her choice of words in that moment where she's like, when I open my eyes, I will see what is true. And she thinks that that's going to be a human. And it's the choice of the words. It's not, I'm going to see this person. It's, I'm going to see what's true. And it's kind of that first moment that we see that, well, what you know to be true is not accurate.
It ain't. And so that's the beginning of her transformation, right? So the world is continuing to pull us in. And I, as a reader, was like, what the F is happening? What is happening? And then we learn not long after that Mac has kind of a superpower. She's a she-seer, which means she can see beyond the Fae glamours for what they really are. And she learns that through Barons. And it's just more evidence that Dublin is different. It's different. She was accosted earlier by that old lady.
Yeah.
And who was like, I know what you are. And Mac's like, what are you talking about? You're nuts. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, and she's very, like she says, I'm very anti-woo-woo. I don't believe in vampires or werewolves or anything like that. And even when she's initially like trying to figure out what the Shisadu is, she asks somebody or asks what the Tuatha De Danann are, and someone is like, "Oh, it's what all of you tourists come here to find, you know,
Fairies.
little leprechauns and fairies at the end of a rainbow." And she's like, "All right, well, this is dumb. Now I just
Everyone's
look like an
messing with
idiot."
me.
Yeah, but obviously she also realizes that version is not actually what the Fae are.
Yeah. Ooh. And we learn more about what the Fae actually are. Ooh.
So much.
As Mac comes to terms with who she is and what she's able to do, we see more and more behind the veil, right? We see more Seelie and Unseelie, what they look like. The Unseelie are grotesque, hideous, spooky, scary monsters. And then we meet Vlaine.
Oh, Vlaine.
Woo, buddy. Vlaine is something else.
And this is not really a spoiler, but kind of foreshadowing other books. The number of times that she attempts to describe him and the different ways that she struggles to do so. And also the way it's all consistent. Like, it's consistent and it's different, but you still get the same concept. it's so beautiful. Like I couldn't look at him. I wouldn't be able to.
She can barely look at him.
That's true.
She describes him as unutterably beautiful. It's crazy.
Like the nuanced coloring of just the strands of hair, like the way she describes just his hair, but also she adds the textural component, like the velvety smoothness. Like there's so much that goes into describing him.
Truly. And even though there's no touch involved yet in this book between the two of them, temperature changes around him based on his mood. And so we're getting more sensory description of what it's like to be in his presence, right? So when he gets upset, it goes cold. The air changes around her, which is just so cool to think about. I don't know, just all your senses alight when Vlaine is there in more ways than one. As we know, if you recall our synopsis, he is the fae that makes human women addicted to sex. Haha. And Mac is not immune to that, at least to the initial powers of Vlaine.
She does have relatively strong resistance, all things considered. Because even without the like magical woo-woo stuff, I don't know that I could resist like the physical presence of him.
Yeah. So Mac is also, she not only can see beyond Fae glamour, she's also able to detect Fae relics. And this becomes key to the story and Mac's place in this world. She can sense where the Fae relics are in proximity to her because she describes physical sickness near them. She hasn't learned to master that part yet. But this becomes, like I said, central to who she is in this world because other people use her for that power.
Yeah, she describes herself, and it's funny because she starts by describing herself positively as a bloodhound. Mm-hmm. She said, there's a lot of things that a man can go without, but a hunting man can go without, but his bloodhound isn't one of them. And she's almost got a sense of pride in that because she has used that to her advantage in that moment. But again, as with all things in this story, that viewpoint eventually changes.
For sure. Absolutely. So we've talked through how Mac is really our gateway into this world and how the world has changed as Mac continues to learn more. Hopefully we're not too spoilery. But I want to talk about a narrative device that Moning also uses where Mac breaks the fourth wall every time and again. She occasionally addresses us as readers directly, and my understanding is that this book is written from Mac's retelling almost as if it's her journal. So maybe she's like breaking the fourth wall to herself, but I'm the reader in this case. And often it feels a little jarring to me because it takes me out of the world for a second. I'm like, oh, like what was that? Like a Jim Halpert look to camera, like, ugh, you just became really real. But it does reinforce the idea that we're reading through Mac's retelling and personal account. So I know why it's like a deliberate, like stylistic choice and can add a layer of intimacy to the experience, but it does occasionally pull me out.
I agree that it's jarring, but for me it almost sucks me in a little bit more because I feel like Mac is sitting there telling me and she's like been reading out her journals and like going through those, but then she's like, oh, but I need to give you some like player knowledge that's not in the journal, so I'm telling you. And I'm like, yeah, I'm right here. And so it's like, I'm with you.
It's just those moments where she says, I have some quotes pulled up. You're probably thinking I'm stupid. I was. And I was like, well, I didn't need that. I didn't need that moment. She's anticipating our judgment there. And I wasn't judging her in that moment because I'm learning with her, right? Like you said earlier, she's telling her memories of it. This is all in hindsight. Like, but I'm new. I'm not judging you, girl. Like, get on with your bad self. Or this one, don't you love it when the heroine makes dumb decisions? Yeah, me neither. All right. Like, it's a little charming, right? But it does distance me somewhat.
Fair.
But overall, Mac as the main device to build the world really works for me.
Yeah, I again, I think like for me, it makes her more real to me because, and I think it's because I have that same sense of humor of like the self-deprecation of like, "Ah, yeah, I know I'm such an idiot." And so it's like that makes her more relatable for me. So, yeah.
Yeah. We do learn some of the rules of this world through Mac's journals, right? So she's keeping like a running tab of terminology or, I don't know, everything that she learns as she encounters the Fae through research or conversations with Baron. But sometimes that feels supplemental to the story itself. We're in the world, we're learning with her. These rules are important, but maybe not the driving force. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the rules of this world.
Absolutely. So we learn fairly early on that the Fae have what Barons describes as very precise language. They don't believe in they don't necessarily believe in like destruction or creation. They believe in stasis and change. And Baron says, well, you know, that a change is both creation and destruction because in the making of one thing, you have unmade another. And this doesn't sit well with her, but like it drastically changes like the way she looks at things, but also like reinforces her dislike of the Fae.
And what a guiding principle for the book overall, right? Like throughout this book is a making and an unmaking. As we're making this new Dublin world a new Mac, we have to unmake the old one.
Yeah.
We are also in a change with her. Now, I'm not saying we are Fae living by their rules. However, it seems like this is an underlying kind of theme throughout the book.
Well, and it ties well with like the grief that she feels, and some of the confusion because she acknowledges several times that she's like trying to hold on to old aspects of herself while simultaneously acknowledging and like processing that there are things she has to let go of and that things that she's already lost of herself.
Yeah. A couple other rules that we learned that are pretty constant, I think, every time we talk about a book talks about Fae, we have glamours, right? So it's an illusion that a Fae can put on to shield themselves from others, but they can also glamour situations. I think about that scene where Mac is at the museum and Blaine shows up and they have an interaction, but no one is reacting. No one else around is reacting because he has glamoured the entire interaction between the two of them.
Until he's not.
Until he doesn't. And then she is caught with her pants down, damn near literally.
And a couple other things. So,
yes. And then another one that stands out to me is sifting. So how Fae move nearly instantaneously. They can sift through time. And so Mac is able to watch them vanish or shift from place to place. And then we learn she's got an additional gift called being a null.
So when she touches them, she can freeze them in both time and place. But they're still conscious and aware. So it's interesting that their physical self is frozen, but they're still hyper aware.
Yeah.
Which almost seems more dangerous because if you literally can't move and all you can focus on is what's happening, how much more time do you have to prepare?
Ugh, I don't like that. I don't like that.
You're welcome.
And we learn a little bit more about the different caste system within this Fae. We have the Unseelie, which has its own caste system, and then the Seelie, which again have their own as well. But each have like princes, and then it goes further down from there until you get to the lowest class of the Unseelie, caste of the Unseelie.
Both have 4 houses that mimic each other. And that 4, interestingly, is a very powerful number for them. They have 4 houses. They have 4 hallowed relics. So interesting because like generally 3 is your magic number.
Curious indeed. Any other rules that are top of mind for you?
Obviously, those relics are the objects of power, which are important in Mac's role in this new world, in that she is the oop detector. So,
Oops. All right. One last thing before we leave this world. Let's talk portal moments. So at the end of each episode, we'll talk a peak portal moment. The moment in the book where we felt the most immersed, where the world felt the biggest, the realest, where it took up the most space. I'm going to let you go first.
okay. So regardless of your belief system, I grew up in a haunted house and you can't tell me otherwise. And so, and even if you haven't, there's just that phenomenon when you're walking up stairs and you feel like someone is behind you. And when she is walking through the dark zone that first time and she like gives space between the person she's following because she's obviously made them uncomfortable, the sensation that she feels where it's like she can't see the shades yet, but she can feel them and she can feel that they're watching her. And she has that sense of uneasiness and a sickness in her stomach. And every single time I feel that. I feel it in my bones, in my gut. I am right there with her. And it doesn't matter that I have read this particular book at least 15 times. So every single time I am taken back to, like, in that moment, I am there. My stomach feels sick. I don't want to walk from room to room. I can feel eyes on me. And that carries and transcends beyond when I close the book. Like, for a little bit. I, like, have to, like, turn on all the lights. Kind of, like, talk to somebody.
Mac does after she learns what the shades are. I want to flip to that because there's so many incredible descriptions in there, right? I was feeling increasingly nauseated and my skin was starting to crawl. It was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the muted muffle of my footsteps and the slow dripping of gutters emptying into drain pipes. You're really, like, painting the picture.
Well,
she
and
could smell
there's
the
ambient
stench of the sewers. Great. Love that.
There's, like, the ambient noise, but all of that ambient noise is it's not sentient, but it's all created by the environment and not by anything living, which is very important.
Ugh. Ugh. That one is creepy. That was creepy. And then later she goes back to the dark zones knowing what's in there. Talk about brave. This chick becomes brave. Or stupid, as she would say.
Little combi, little combi.
¿Por qué no los dos? For me, my top portal moment also happens really early in the book. And I talked about it a little bit earlier when she's at the pub and she first sees through a fae glamour. And I flipped to it so we could talk through it a little bit more. She describes this as, I was suddenly having some kind of waking vision. But in this version of reality, he wasn't gorgeous at all. He was nothing but a carefully camouflaged abomination. And then goes on to describe in vivid detail what this creature looks like, including that he smells of decay. And the foul odor might choke me to death. We've been around those people. We've been around those people. And she says, I would see exactly what he was if I could only look harder somehow. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? Where are we? Can we go further? And she's also seeing what that gray man is doing to the woman that he's with, right? He is literally sucking the life out of her and draining all of this. And to think about that occurring in front of my own two eyes, my sister has just died. I'm in a new city trying to look for answers and solve her murder. I've walked through God knows where, doing God knows what, and have showed up at this pub looking for comfort. And I see that. My ass is going back on a plane. I'm going home. Closing the book. I'm going home.
Yeah, I love my sister. I have a sister. I love my sister. That I don't love her enough.
Yeah, not
I'm
like
gonna be
that.
honest, not to sit through that. Well, and like the fact, I think obviously that plays into, and she talks about it closer to the end, but like her instincts as a she-seer and like what like is inherently in like ancestrally what she has retained or whatever. But like she says like, I believe the reason I survived that encounter is because I stayed.
Yeah.
I stayed and I pretended like I didn't see what I saw.
Yeah.
And like the idea of seeing something and smelling something that foul and
Not
like,
reacting?
Not reacting. And finishing what again, I arguably love ketchup soaked fries.
Yeah.
That is not something that you eat with a weak stomach. And I would absolutely have a weak stomach in that moment.
For sure. For sure. Okay. There's one more that I want to talk about, if that's okay.
Always.
This was another hard no for me. I, reading this, wanted to close the book because like you, when you're like, I want to turn on all the lights. I want to feel safe and cozy and comfy. This moment at the end, near the end of the book, made me want to stop. I mean, we kept reading, obviously we did, but Mac ends up going to somewhere called 1247 LaRue Street. Initially, this is not anywhere on a map that she can find, and she has asked around different cabbies, different people. Everybody looks at her like she's crazy, and she finally finds it within that dark zone. And when she gets there, she comes across this house that looks like it's falling apart, and all the windows are painted black, but she feels like Alina had sent her there. And she's like, all right, I'm going to go in. And what we find behind that house, no. She describes it as a gate to hell. Things we've never even come close to creating in our scariest horror flicks are coming through a literal portal with a Lord Master in robes just presiding over it. There are monsters rushing into the city through this, and we're just supposed to be like, oh, totally normal. No, I'm out. I'm out.
What I will say about that moment, like, first of all, on the horror side, like the absolute terror of things beyond our imagination, because I feel like we have imagined some pretty grotesque things. So there's that. But also, like, she describes that, one of the casts that she had seen around the city in many places, that they were rounding up these new incoming monsters and like organizing them in like in units, in like battle units.
This is an army.
And I'm like, I gotta be a little bit impressed that these monsters are organized. And that
maybe they've got a color-coded calendar.
Like, I can respect that,
They're marching in step.
Like, you've just come in. You have no military training that I know of.
Yeah.
Like, you're monsters.
Yeah.
Who taught you?
You may have too many arms or no arms.
Yeah. You may have appendages in the wrong place. I don't know.
Or many of them.
Or many of them. And so, like, I have to be a little bit impressed in that moment.
You stay curious. I am a chicken. My heart rate literally climbed during the 2 times that I've read this. My heart rate goes up, right? We've followed Mac throughout this story. We've learned about this world. We've seen the transformations that have happened from very beginning to this near the very end. And that felt so stinking real to me. Real, because I'd gone on this journey with her. I was fully immersed in the world from start to finish.
It's one of the things I love about this book.
It's so good.
And the series in general.
So before we wrap up, are there anything top of mind that you'd like to share that we didn't cover so far?
I think the only thing we've loosely, tangentially talked about, you said no one could tell her where this address was. And because it's in the middle of what she deems a dark zone, which is an area that the shades have basically just destroyed. Or all life, at least. But she talks about, in the middle of the book, she has this dream where she's both standing in the doorway of Barron's bookstore and floating over Dublin, and she sees these pockets of darkness, and how she's afraid that at any moment another streetlight is going to flicker and the shades are going to come in and just destroy it, and another area is going to be forgotten. And while we accept mostly in the rule that the shades consume a physical essence, I almost wonder if there is a metaphysical component, if they are consuming the essence of the space too, because obviously those people are missing. And so like you still remember them, but like there's no concept of the space.
Yeah.
No district will claim it. No, like if you ask a cabbie or if you ask a utilities person, they don't know what you're talking about.
Exist.
It doesn't exist. In the maps, she says at one point there's like 11 city blocks between one block on a map. And so just the idea that those shades like eat more or consume more than just the physical presence.
It's so good. The shades are so interesting and stay interesting throughout the series too.
And they're like she says, this base level of
It's like the lowest caste,
yeah,
right?
the
in
lowest
Unseelie,
caste of Unseelie. And she can't do anything about them because she can't touch them to null them. She can't kill them with like her weapon. The only thing she can do is stay to the light. So
There's one quote that I think we both pulled out from this book that kind of nails the whole thesis of this podcast that I wanted to close with before we wrap up. Moning says, a good book lets you choose a few thoughts for yourself. Movies show you the pink house. A good book tells you there's a pink house and lets you paint some of the finishing touches. Maybe choose the roof style. Park your car out front. And I read that and highlighted it immediately because I was like, that is what we talk about at World Within, is how did we fill in the gaps? You can describe it to us, author or character, or however the narrative device is, but how do we fill in the gaps? And can we? Can we feel like we're a part of the world? Can I see the pink house? And in this situation, I can see it all. See it all.
and every other color of the rainbow that Mac has. Yeah, I did think it was cool that we both, when we were talking about this episode, and we both were like, yeah, I pulled this quote. And I'm like, aha.
Same braining, same brain.
A dangerous place.
Yeah. But I think that's a wrap on this episode of Worlds Within.
Well, before we go, why don't we give Dark Fever our immersion rating on a scale of 1 to 10 portals?
I'm going to go with 8 out of 10 portals. I know I've said a lot on this whole show that I am right there with Mac and feel very immersed into the world beginning to end, but I can't let go of some of those fourth wall breaks that kind of pull me out a little bit.
That's fair. Personally, I very rarely do this in my life because I'm very much we can always do better. But I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. There's a reason that I keep coming back to this series, and it's because I am constantly drawn back into the world, even in every rereading, which is not always true. Sometimes it's good the first time and it's not the second time, and that has not been the case with this book or this series.
I feel like there's a part of you that wants to go to Dublin to prove that you are a she-seer.
No.
All right. But throughout this book, we had incredible sensory detail, layered mythology, the overall mood and vibe of Dublin and everywhere else Mac visits along her travels with barons. Layers, vampires, what are we doing? Or we saw it all through Mac's lens and her shifting perspective. And if this book taught us anything, it's that immersion doesn't always happen all at once. It can be gradual, right? And sometimes the real magic of world building is in watching the cracks form and then choosing to step through them.
I like it. Next up on Worlds Within, we are going to read Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, a dark fairy tale about the reluctant heroine, a demon-possessed chicken, and a journey that twists through realms of grit and magic. We can't wait to wander through that world with you. Until then, subscribe, leave us a review, and let us know. Where did you feel the story become space? Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Worlds Within, where story becomes space. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Worlds Within Pod for more episodes, sensory guides to your favorite books, and more.
And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Bye!